Happy Halloween, everybody, and welcome to the first of many Halloween-centered reviews. For the rest of October, I will be reviewing many upon many of my favorite Halloween-centered horror movies, or just movies in general, or maybe even just a couple TV specials just to mix it up a bit. But for this one in particular, I'm going to be looking at a Halloween horror-centered movie that I have never seen before. This is the first time I have ever seen this movie specifically for its 50th anniversary, and that is the Halloween horror movie classic, The Exorcist. I don't know why I have never seen this movie before now. I mean, this is a movie that has been praised as potentially the scariest film ever made, and I have just never seen it, and I truly don't know why. I mean, I've seen The Shining, I've seen Halloween, I've seen the Friday the 13th franchise, I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street. This seems like one of the most logical progressions to take in my horror movie franchise journey, and I have just never taken it for some reason. And after 50 years of its release, finally seeing it this past week, I can honestly say I was missing out. This truly still stands as one of the greatest horror movies ever made, and still potentially one of the scariest horror films ever made. This movie is so beloved and has been analyzed so in depth that the only way that I can truly look at this film is to analyze it in depth through my personal experience. So, in case you have never seen The Exorcist, I'm giving you full warning right now. This is a spoiler-filled review. That is your warning, and if you have seen The Exorcist or just don't care, welcome. So the movie opens in this gigantic dig site in northern Iraq where we see Father Marin, played by Max von Sydow, participating in the expedition. And after resting in a local town, he goes on to discover and come face to face with a strange and ominous statue. And in my opinion, the good majority of this film's strengths and weaknesses can be summed up in these first couple scenes. Let's start off with the gorgeous cinematography. I mean, in these few first scenes alone, you truly do feel the size and scale of this expedition. I mean, there's one moment in particular where a little boy goes into one of these intricate tunnels at this expedition site, and the camera is looking down on him, and my God, just the way that the camera follows him so thoroughly through each and every corner, the OCD part of my mind was in love with it. Also, we have our first look at the makeup in this movie. Now, we'll get into the makeup later on with Regan, but in this scene alone, you truly do get a great look at just how amazing the makeup's going to be in the rest of this movie with Max von Sydow's character. I mean, in real life, Max von Sydow was like 40 years old, and the makeup truly makes him look like he is double that age. It is incredible old age makeup. I will be honest that the pacing, especially in the last half of this opening, can feel a little drawn out, but to be fair, as Max von Sydow goes farther and farther away from the city towards the statue, and you hear less and less sound accompanying him, it truly does make it feel all the more eerie. We then cut to the States where we see our two main storylines of the film. One involving the mother and daughter dynamic of Chris and Regan, played by Ellen Bernstein and Linda Blair, and the down-in-the-dumps priest story of Father Karras, played by Jason Miller, with their own separate strengths and weaknesses. In Chris and Regan's storyline, their dynamic feels so real. Bernstein and Blair's chemistry is on point with, at first glance, this great light-hearted dynamic that is slowly soured with every following scene of the possession. Not only do you spend a great amount of time getting to know them as mother and daughter, and you get to see a little bit of their background before this film starts, but once the plot starts to happen and the possession is in full force, it's not just, oh, she's possessed, let's call an exorcist. No, it is a great logical progression. In terms of Regan, she isn't just instantly possessed. No, you see her mood start to sour more and more and more, and you see her start to act more and more out of character from the innocent 12-year-old that you got to know in the first 30 minutes of the movie, to the point where once all of the possessions start to happen, you really do feel the torment that not just Regan, but her mother goes through. And as for Chris, she doesn't just instantly call a priest or anything like that. It's not nearly rushed in the slightest. At first, she goes to a doctor, and then the doctor gets more and more consultants as the film goes on, to the point where she really has to consider getting a psychiatrist, going through hypnosis, and then later on, like halfway through the film, then she goes to a priest, not because she legitimately believes in it, but as a form of shock therapy. It's a very logical progression that takes a good amount of time to really explore the fact that this is what a normal person would do in these situations. And that helps the film feel so much more real than it is. Father Karras' story is where I find the most flaws with the film, however. His scenes bonding with his mother are fine enough, but it all feels very choppy. Not only do most of his scenes in the first half of his story feel very slow, but once his mother dies, all of his scenes feel distractingly choppy. Hell, we don't even see the death of his mother. We only hear about it through a secondary character. But I will give credit where credit is due. Jason Miller probably gives the best performance in the entire movie. Just through his character's expressions, you can just see so much history and pain in his eyes. His deteriorating faith throughout years and years of trial and tribulations, all culminating in the death of his mother, and you truly do feel all of that pain and all of that history with barely a single word of dialogue relating to his past. And then we get to, by far, the two scariest scenes in the entire movie. The spider walk scene and the crucifix scene. Oh, here we go. When you look at it plainly, what these two scenes do is nothing new from what has been copied time and time again after this film. Jump scares and shock horror. But the reason why these two scenes still work so well, whereas so many scenes that copy these two scares don't, truly is because of the sound. When you look at a horror film nowadays, when it relates to the actual scares, the music and the sound design will try to make it seem as bombastic and important as possible. And while sometimes that is creepy, it's never truly scary, not in the way that these scenes are. In these two scenes, there is no music. It is literally just the sound coming from the actual story taking place in the script, and it is all the scarier for it. When you see the spider walk, you don't really see it first. You just hear Regan coming down the stairs, you see Chris's horrified expression, and then you see Regan going upside down, walking backwards throughout the stairs. And the crucifix scene works so well, not because of the music, but just because of the stabbing sound effects, the fact that Regan's voice is constantly distorted, and then you get to that creepy as all hell wide shot of her head just spinning around in a 360. There is no music, there is no grand sound design, there is only the slightest hint of Foley, and then the scene speaking for itself. Once Chris reaches out to Father Karras, we see some of, in my opinion, the most entertaining scenes in the movie. Not only does the makeup artist Dick Smith's makeup on Regan practically make her look like an entirely different character, not only does Mercedes McCambridge's creepy as all hell dubbing as the demon possessing Regan make every line stick in your mind, but the chemistry these two characters share just makes their two interactions so interesting. I kind of love the almost mocking tone that the two characters take with one another, especially in their second interaction when Karras sits down, a drawer suddenly opens up, and he just looks at Regan and just says, "Did you do that?" Almost like Regan is a pet and Karras just came home to find an entire box of cookies ripped into. So once Karras proves this is a legitimate case of possession, the help of Father Merrin is requested, and so begins the extended yet still climactic exorcism. And there are just so many standout iconic moments from this last third of the film. Everything from the makeup on Regan, to the lighting of the room, to the mist coming from who knows where, and especially Max von Sydow and Jason Miller's horrified expressions as they see Regan do all of these impossible things, from spinning her head around to floating above the bed in an effect that is so believable it still holds up, not only as a believable effect, but a scary effect to this day. It gets to the point where when the two priests take a break to discuss their faith, you kind of feel glad because you truly do feel like you need a break as well from just all of the intensity that was just thrown at you throughout what felt like 15 minutes. So when Father Merrin goes in alone to confront the demon, Father Karras comes in a little later and finds that Father Merrin is dead and Regan is untied. Is this a plot hole? Did he have a heart attack? Did she kill him? Honestly, who cares, because Regan's expressions are horrifying. So tired of all the pain and suffering caused by the demon, Karras invites the demon to possess him, only to toss himself out the window to his and the demon's supposed death. And I say supposed because even though I haven't seen it, I know Exorcist 3 is a thing. But once Regan, free of the demon's grasp, just calls out to Chris, "Mother, mother, mother," and they hug in an embrace as they don't care about all of the destruction that has just happened around them. They're just happy that they're both finally safe. You truly do feel that weight lifted off of your shoulders as well, because the tone of this movie that has just been so depressingly beaten down into all of these characters finally feels like it's lifted. Do I personally have my problems with The Exorcist? Sure, sometimes the pacing can be a little too slow for the movie's good, but overall, that problem is practically a nitpick in the grand scheme of just how well this movie holds up. The acting is fantastic, the cinematography is gorgeous, the score and sound design are haunting, the makeup and effects are outstanding, and every single one of the scares still holds up remarkably well, almost impossibly well. As a first-time viewer of this film, this certainly will not be my only watch, as this movie is more than deserving of its reputation. I'm going to give The Exorcist an A. Again, slight problems, but overall, brilliant. Well guys, thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below, what did you think of The Exorcist? What do you think of The Exorcist? Is it fantastic, or do you possibly think it is a little overrated? If so, please tell me why in the comments down below. I would love to hear your opinions. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more Halloween-centered reviews. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon down below to stay up to date on all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.